Welcome, I'm Scarlett Vespa, and we're here to share with the world that we're still sexy, smart and over 40. Did you know in Australia, 1/3 of the population is over 50? That's nearly 8 million people. A small demographic? I don't think so. We're here to raise our hand and be seen, be heard, and to help others feel that they have a voice, even though they might be over 40. So how does the media portray women? We're all about empowering women over 40 at the style of Mrs. V. That doesn't seem to happen in the workplace and at home. But what about the media? Do we see women over 40 portrayed well, sexy and smart, or are they just not portrayed at all? I chatted with Jane Caro, broadcaster and women's rights advocate in education and in the media, Kay Schubuck, a victim of domestic violence and now advocate for women's rights, and Mika Buchan, TV producer and long-time presenter in sports and travel across the US and Australia. So let's see what they had to say. So girls, here we are, we're talking about a very important subject, which is women in the media. Very excited to have you all here. So firstly, Jane, tell me, you're in the media a lot at present especially. What is your feeling on how the media portray women?
Well, it very much depends on the woman and it very much depends on the media. I mean, I think one of the problems, I remember going on Q&A not recently, a few years ago, and they said to me, oh, it's an all-woman episode, apart from Tony Jones. And that was fine, except all the questions but one were basically about being owners of vaginas. So it was about sexual things, or it was about sex workers, or it was about, you know, pregnancy and all that kind of thing. And I thought, so women are women on the media, but men are people. Men are allowed to have a kind of breadth of experience. But once you're a woman on the media, oh, let's get the chick to talk about the chick stuff. And I think that's so reductive. And actually, I want to see women being asked to appear on media, not as women, but you know what, as people. And that's what we still haven't quite cracked.
It's interesting because Mika, you're a TV presenter, you've been in the industry for many years, sports presenter, been around that industry. As a woman, it's very interesting. So one of the things that they say is, oh, they've compared things where if you ask the same thing to a man and you ask it to a woman, like you wouldn't ask those things, like what are you wearing? I mean, do you find that or?
Yeah, I think that's, and I think to that point as well, the definition between a female sports journalist and a male sports journalist is again so reductive. It drives me insane. I can know as much about a sport as a female as any man can, and a lot of the men who are really great commentators are actually not ex-athletes. So some of the criticism of female sports commentators and reporters is they didn't play the game, how could they possibly know about it? I'm like, well, you know, Steve Quartermain didn't exactly play, you know, the Bruce McAvaney didn't exactly play. The guys who are, I think, the giants of that particular field are not necessarily people who excelled at the top of their game. So being a female sports reporter, I'm like, I'm just good at my job. I'm just a good sports reporter. And I think that happens across all the different fields.
And so what is it, have you found recently, you know, being a woman in media, do you see the difference? Because you've come through it for such a long period. Yeah,
like 21 years of hosting shows, I've seen a lot of differences. But one of the things that I worked in America for a long time, and over there I didn't feel like the token girl so much, whereas I came back and it was like, right, okay, you're on a sports panel, you can be the girl. You know, so basically this need to actually balance. And I think that there are still some 50s opinions when it comes to what we allow women to do and say. You know, that women have to be a certain type of look for a certain type of show. I mean, I sort of grew up, and I don't know about you guys, I was the gangly, unattractive chick, and the fact that when they chucked me on TV for the first time, I was like, oh, I just wanted to be back there telling stories, and all of a sudden there's emphasis on how you look. And you know, over the years when I first started, they used to want to do the helmet hair blow dry, and I'm not that chick, you know. I'm a sports girl, I'm a tomboy, and I don't want to waste 2 hours sitting in a makeup chair before I go on air if I'm going to anchor a show. I want to spend those 2 hours reading every last bit of news and copy that's coming in, because an auto cue might go down and I've got to be able to talk about that story. I don't want to just have a script in front of me that someone's prepared because I'm the chick.
But that's the thing about the chick, isn't it? Because that's the thing I notice so much about panel shows now. It's unacceptable to have an all-male panel. So what they've done is they've opened the door wide enough to let one chick through. So the problem with that is we end up competing with one another for the one chick's spot on the panel. We're not competing with the men at all. We're competing with the other women who are also getting that spot. instead, I mean, why not have an all-woman panel occasionally and an all-male panel occasionally or whatever? Oh, no. More than one woman. Oh my God, penises around Australia start falling off.
Well, and you know what also, it is actually the male audience that is the most critical of the female opinions. I actually was, a couple of years ago, Lucas Neal, who was in the Socceroos, basically was gesturing towards the crowd that were booing him because apparently he'd stayed in the team and should have gone out to let a younger guy come in. And I'm on a panel show with a couple of ex-Australian cricketers and they're like, no, the captain of Australia should never do that to the crowd. I'm like, the crowd is yelling at our national captain. He can make gestures towards them if he likes. And I got all of this social media guff from guys going, who do you think you are competing with these guys and telling them your opinion? You're just the girl. And I was like, well, I've been a reporter for 20 years all over the world. What do you know?
Yeah.
You know, so there is this sort of sense that you've got to work twice as hard to get respect in a field that is definitely, you know, and being an expert outside of, as you say, women's issues, you've got to work double hard to be respected.
It is like you have to work twice as hard.
Which is fine, because I'm a hard worker.
Yes.
I'm not, I'm lazy as shit and I don't want to work hard.
But it's funny, so I was just thinking about one of the shows on at the moment with Aisha's that's on there and the guy that's on it.
Joe,
yeah.
Joe, and it's so
Studio
funny.
10.
I feel like there's the bloke, and that's even out of balance for me. It's very strange. And I love the idea of having all women because we all do. We love chatting each other. I mean, my girlfriends and my, you know, I need them. And I don't see why you don't have that.
Yep.
Kay, you have had an extraordinary experience in your rights and it been difficult, you know, being through domestic violence, and your story is very much prevalent in the news at the moment, actually.
It is, yeah.
So when you took your experience to the media, how was it received?
Actually, surprisingly well. People do value survivors' stories. The difficulty, and I was never really judged. When my book was about to come out, I had quite a few friends say, we're going to protect you from social media. We're not going to let you read any of it. I had one girlfriend say, don't write this book because you'll never be respected again because you showed bad judgment, you know, at work with the relationship that you picked and allowing yourself to be in a relationship that got violent. But, you know, I forged ahead. I had a Penguin deal and I thought, there's no way I'm going to let this go.
Yeah.
The feedback was always really, really supportive. All of the journalists were actually fantastic. The only time I've really been judged is a very moralistic one because I terminated a pregnancy that I was pregnant to my abuser.
Shout out about abortions.
Yeah. I knew
Let's not even get to
the
rights.
future was going to be hell if I went through with that, and I was very much threatened with that. And I had also left a relationship to be with my abuser. And so I had a bit of moralising going on there. You know, I deserve basically everything I got in some people's eyes. But the interesting thing is now moving from a survivor narrative to an advocate and now a consultant. And people want to come back to that survivor story, and that's fine because it's authentic. Authentic stories have a lot of power. But for me to try to shift that now to actually becoming an expert on the field that I'm talking about is a bit more of a challenge.
And to that point, one of the things that's been interesting, especially in preparation for today, looking at that difference between expert stories and expert voices and victim stories and victim voices. And in many newspapers, particularly in Australia, you'll look at stories that are actually about a female. Most of the stories are victim-based stories, and 80%, I think it is actually 80% of the experts that commentate on stories involving female victims are men. So basically, the narrative that's going out into the wide world from media is that women are victims and men are either the perpetrators of a crime, so therefore trying to assert their dominance, or they're experts on the crime. So basically...
So therefore trying to assert their dominance.
Yeah. And also they're counting on female readers empathising with the victim, and they're counting on male readers empathising either with the perpetrator or with the expert. So it's creating a narrative of women actually being subverted. And I think that that's actually a really important thing for us to talk about, because there should be a rule that there are a minimum number of female experts. And actually Bloomberg last year is one of the first media outlets that actually tried to I guess, sort of balance that back up, because they are specifically finance, technology, politics, things like that, and how they interact. And something like 90% of the experts that they were quoting were men. So now they've actually made a rule that every single piece that goes out that has an opinion in it must have a female voice.
Hooray.
And the Press Council last year had a roundtable about reporting on domestic violence and the guidelines around that. And it was very much giving credence to the victims' voices, actually letting them have a voice. And there was a prevalence for a while to go to the perpetrator and try and understand what had caused him to act that way. So the victim didn't have a voice, and so recently with the big rape trial and the victim's statement that came out with the Stanford University, that has really changed the paradigm, I think, because that had such a huge effect where her voice, everything that happened to her, we could really almost viscerally feel, and that's really changed.
But it's really
the voice.
difficult. I think the one thing is that, like, you're going from a victim place, and that's of course where you come from, and you're saying stepping into that expert. There is the Australian public love that kind of underdog.
The drama
so
story.
when you come into a place of power, there's a bit of resistance, and I think that
There's
happens.
a tremendous resistance,
huge.
particularly for women in power. I think we have to understand just how deep that prejudice is against women taking a power or stepping up and saying, I want more, I want this. I think it's really interesting what happened to Julia Gillard when she decided she wanted to be Prime Minister, and now I think it's really interesting watching Hillary Clinton wanting to be President. People keep saying to me, oh, she's so unlikable. Well, actually, there's never been a woman who wanted to go up for a power position who wasn't unlikable.
Yeah.
There's been lots of research to show that the higher we rate men on skills, the higher we rate them for likability. The higher we rate women on skills, the lower we rate them on likability. So Hillary Clinton is probably one of the, you know, who knows whether she's likable or unlikable.
She's qualified as hell.
She's qualified, but also she's not unlikable intrinsically. She's unlikable because she's a woman who's going for power.
Yeah.
And we don't like that.
And she's a woman that also, that came from what would be, I guess, designated as a victim point of view as being cheated on.
Yeah.
So the fact that she hung around, she didn't go away, she was an incredibly successful Secretary of State, and now has actually weathered all of the barbs and arrows of a US presidential campaign to get where she is. People are just like, I can't believe she just won't go away. I'm like, guess what? I am woman, hear me roar. I actually think it's fantastic.
And they're criticising her because that she aided and abetted her husband's affair because she was the bystander.
Oh my
know,
God,
and
are we
she
going to
didn't
get into,
Yeah, and
talk
she
about
didn't
victim
leave, so
blaming.
that
Yeah, I
was
know.
it, yeah. And they didn't like that, you know, we were talking
Yeah.
before, it's like that she didn't leave. The people don't like that she didn't stand up. But then that opens that whole subject about who knows what relationship goes on.
Correct.
How-
Yeah.
Who are we to judge that?
I know.
So this is, I think, something else that we were talking about earlier. I think that this also comes back to this reality show culture where everyone feels now that they have a right to have an opinion on everybody else's life. So basically, so you have, you know, American Idol, Australian Idol, shows where we vote. So people are sitting at home on their couches thinking, if I ring up and I vote, I get a say, and that actually affects the outcome of what happens over there. So if you have an opinion about Hillary and she doesn't do what you want, all of a sudden you're angry because the outcome you were voting for internally didn't manifest. So I think this sense of entitlement that as...
Well, you do have a vote with Hillary if you're an American
Yeah.
citizen, as it turns out. Women of America, go out and exercise your vote.
Yeah, exactly. But in terms of leaving her husband, it's like, that's not the outcome I wanted, so I'm going to disrespect you in public. So I think that that's... And I think that this reality show culture, especially when it comes to women, is it's like this cult of mediocrity. We want each other to be just good enough that I can relate to you, but not so good that I'm not sure that I could be you.
And the one thing that's fascinating me is the Google Books thing. I love
I
Google
think
Books.
so too.
Is it
But
good?
it actually
Goggle?
heartened me to see that.
It's very
Because at
funny.
first I was horrified by the concept of Gogglebot.
Watching people watch
Yeah,
TV.
yeah, but in fact they do show that they see through the bullshit. I know, I think it's actually quite
It was
surprising.
I love
very
it.
enlightening because you went, actually, people aren't idiots, they know.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
they get
feel
it.
and they get it.
Yeah.
So Jane, with you being out there at the moment, we're talking just back to about, you know, women in the media, what's happening. Do you think there's anything people can do or be aware of to kind of change that culture? or-
Look, I think it is changing. I actually think it is changing. I mean, the very fact that I'm out in the media, I really didn't get a media career of any know until I was 50.
That's because you're badass.
Actually, you know what? It's because I just say what I think.
Yeah.
And what's scary is that that's so unusual. You can get a goddamn media career doing that. I recommend it. Please do it. But
But be prepared, right?
yeah.
And try and get them to pay you.
Yeah.
Yeah. They've got,
There you
oh,
go.
no. I get
Yeah.
paid, don't you worry. But the point is, I think it is becoming more accommodating. I do think women, thanks to social media, which we can slag off, and it can be a real awful free-for-all, of course, and particularly for women, but it's also given women unmediated access to the public conversation for the first time in history.
Yeah.
So marketers are having to catch up, and mainstream media are having to catch up, realising that women are a powerful force.
Yeah.
The most successful online publications are all aimed at women, written by women, for women. That's where the power's going, and the advertising dollars are going. So of course, that is causing the change. It's always in the end money that causes the change. It's not.
Interesting, though.
It's not good arguments so they help. It's actually where the money goes. And you know, women over 50, we are the first generation of women who have worked almost all our lives. We have our own money. We're not waiting for our husbands to give us housekeeping at the end of the week, and we're spending it on ourselves.
Yeah,
And I think for the younger generation of women too, it's great to have people like Lena Dunham coming through, who's
Yeah,
basically
she's
worked
great.
so hard at, you know, the anti-body shaming. She went on her show Girls completely naked as a larger woman. There was an episode where she was having an affair with a much, you know, very good-looking man who aesthetically people assumed she would never be able to be with. And the hate mail she got about casting herself next to this guy started this fantastic conversation about the judgments we make about people. And I think people like that who are going, I'll throw myself in front of the bus in order to have a robust conversation about body image.
Yeah.
And that I think is good for women of all ages and stages. So there are positive things going on.
And it's interesting because I was just told recently that one of the Frankie and Gracie, which was the
Jane
Yeah,
Fonda.
it's great.
Jane Fonda.
I love it.
Do
Lily
you know
Tomlin too.
that is 30% of Netflix who have it are watching it. It's one of the most popular shows.
And they're fantastic.
Gosh, who'd have thought it? Old women? Nobody wants to see old women.
There is something, and you can feel it, that's shifted where there is a focus on, you know what, they're all going to be living longer.
Yeah.
And there's a different thinking. So I think it's come through.
It's coming, but I've still sat in lots of meetings and heard people say things like, oh yes, it's great that we've been so successful with whatever it is, I won't put the names out there, but we need to change the audience, or we need to change the bias, because they're all old women.
What?
I know.
And I always say to them, well, first of all, any marketer who disrespects their audience deserves to fail. And second of all, what would be wrong with old women as your audience? But there's this weird...
And what is old anyway?
prejudice. Oh, anyone over 50.
It's over 50.
But it's
just
this
old.
weird prejudice that it's the kind of daggy audience. The one place I will not go, for example, is any Apple shop. The Apple shop is the most unfriendly environment for a middle-aged woman.
Really?
You can see them looking at you as if to say, I'm sorry, you don't fit our brand image. Could you
Yeah.
leave very, very quickly?
And it's going to take
Right.
Oh,
I
yeah.
find that so
and you won't
shocking.
understand
So
technology.
Yeah. You can't possibly be tech savvy.
You would get it anyway,
Yeah.
so just get that one.
Yeah. Fantastic.
All those young people in T-shirts.
If,
It is, and
if
that's
they see you at
definitely
all,
them.
because
If
you're
they
invisible.
see you at all. If they see you at
And
all.
it is there. I mean, it's across different industry. There's fashion, and it's totally there. But I agree. It's very much instilled in the conversation. And interestingly, it's in the marketing where people don't know what to do about it. Like we recently went and we talked about to one brand saying, you know that a third of the population's over 50, and you're sitting there going, really?
Yeah.
And they don't know where to put that. So I think the wheels are turning. How that comes out will be very interesting.
It also shows the fragility of that, like the ivory towers in a way. And we were talking about before about we're poking the hornet's nest. The more we speak out about uncomfortable subjects, you know, the family court, rape, domestic violence, ad infinitum,
whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're really making a lot of men very, very uncomfortable. A lot of the powerful structures very uncomfortable. But it just kind of shows how fragile they think they are. I mean, they're robust structures. Marriage is a robust structure. Gay marriage is not going to threaten that.
Yeah.
It really not. So it's just it shows the fragility, I
Yeah.
think, of masculinity.
Yes.
And I think challenging paradigms, if you do have the opportunity to have the ear of the public or have that sort of minute, last year I wrote that sort of Sex and the City style column. And the people that were most, and I wrote about, I threw myself in front of the bus. So I was like, someone in Australia has to have or start robust conversations, and there's lots of them going on all the time, about female sexuality, identity, about their choices. What happens when you date after 40? God forbid, I'm not actually with a partner raising 3 children. So all those sorts of things.
And not having children. There's
Yeah.
so much stigma around, oh, you don't understand what
Yeah.
it's like. You don't really know what it means.
Oh, I
It's a
actually
really
had someone
tough
ask me
one.
the other day if I regretted not having them. I'm like, I might still have them. I'll just do it on my own if I want to. Like,
Yeah,
screw
yeah.
you and your paradigms. I'm going to be, whatever my version of me is.
Yeah.
But it was interesting writing that column last year. The most negative feedback I got, and I was talking about everything. It's like, pubic trimming. It was about, having a one-night stand with a 24-year-old. All these things that a 40-plus-year-old woman is definitely not meant to talk about. But I'm like, bring it on. Let's open those doors and actually, try and throw open the doors of how we talk about ourselves and our lives and those uncomfortable things that aren't just vagina-based, but just lifestyle choice-based. And it was all men. It was all men that were offended.
Being a single woman without children over 50, people are really frightened of me sometimes. They
Yeah.
try and fix it all the time.
It's such a,
Tinder,
but
they
it's
keep
so
saying
true.
Tinder.
I
It's
know
like,
women
I don't
do
want
that
to, I'm
too.
actually
No.
fine.
Yeah.
Thanks, I'm okay.
I'm happy.
But you see, now I'm different because I've got 2 daughters and now I've got a grandson. And people also, there's no right way to be a woman. That's the thing that I think we
Yeah.
miss. We think, oh, if only I could find the magic formula of the right way to be a woman where people would approve of me. But there isn't one, so you may as well not try. Because as a grandmother, and I'm very proud of going around saying I'm a grandmother,
Yeah.
there's a kind of frisson of shock that you would admit to being a grandmother,
Yeah.
that you would be fine with that, and that you haven't kind of shriveled up into a
Yeah.
little old lady. Sometimes people, I have noticed, and I really hate this, sometimes people start to call you dear.
Oh my goodness.
Because you're obviously on the edge of senility, any moment. So it doesn't,
Yeah.
a woman without children who's over 50, a woman of 40 who's dating young men,
Yeah.
or the woman who's done ostensibly the right thing, married, had
Yeah.
children and had grandchildren, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You are still always being patronised and stereotyped and kind of wanting to be put in a neat
Yes.
little box somewhere.
And sorry, I just have to admit, my mother, who's 88, has just started an Instagram account. She's so cute. She's going around taking pictures, and I'm thinking, it's just never too old, and she's
No.
come alive. Just tell me, is there anything you'd like to finish with about it, Jane?
I just think that I would like to say if we could stop judging women, if women could stop judging themselves, if they could stop judging one another, and if everybody else could stop judging us and just accept other people, I think if we can be more generous to ourselves and to one another, and of course to men and to children, it doesn't matter, to all human beings, the whole world would feel so much more relaxed and nicer, and
Yeah.
you
I
know,
love that.
just drop the judgment.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and on that, what I was going to say is let's have the narrative around women not be about what they don't have, that they're too this, they're not enough that, I have to be more like this, my hair has to be glossier,
Get the
her hair's...
perfect.
There's this whole sort of comparative culture of someone
Lack.
being more or less than me or someone else.
yeah.
And, the side-by-side comparison culture that happens in media so often with women, I would really like to see that disappear, because I think women are accomplished in lots of different ways, and there is no one sliding scale for them.
Yeah,
It's like
you can't
we all
compare,
accomplish
we're all
things.
unique.
You can be not accomplished.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
okay
yeah,
too.
yeah.
You can
That's
be
okay
accomplished as a mother or as a
You can be
human.
no, you can just be a daggy old lie on the couch, watch back-to-back episodes of Law and Order, and you're still okay.
I would
by
love that.
me.
Kay, tell me, what would you like to
I
leave us
think
with?
if we're looking at the portrayal of women in the media, Clem Ford said something really interesting. Women are viewed as having a past, and men are viewed as having potential.
Yeah,
It's
that's
a
really
real
powerful.
Love
defining-
that.
Change that narrative.
Thanks, Clem.
What a great thing to leave on. Thank you very much, and I'm sure we'll all be back again chatting about it for the next year.
Thanks, guys.
Well, it looks like we're making the world take notice because you're sexy, smart, and over 40. That's the style of Mrs. B.